Aloha and good morning. I would like to call the Planning and the Economy Committee meeting to order. I would like to welcome the following members who are present in the council chambers. Council members Say and Wire. Council member Okimoto is excused this morning, and Vice Chair Cordero will be coming in shortly. Pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92.37, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who registered to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered would be given an opportunity to speak following the registered testifiers. Before testifying, each person shall state their name and would be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at a remote meeting to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, under HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audio-visual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones, and I'd like to welcome Vice Chair Cordero. Moving on to agenda item number 1, Bill 1022, 2022 CD1 addresses the regulation of land uses through Chapter 21 Revised Ordinance of Honolulu 2021, the Land Use Ordinance. Members, as you know, the bill is lengthy and complex. Due to the significance of the changes that Bill 10 would result in with regards to where uses will and will not be permitted, and in what circumstances uses may occur, I want to ensure that the council members and members of the public have sufficient time to review and provide mana'o on each use. Accordingly, at each Planning and the Economy Committee meeting, I will be prioritizing proposed amendments by use type, which started in March with industrial uses, followed by commercial uses in April and today. In response to a request by DPP, we will be pausing further action on Bill 10 after this meeting. While we don't know exactly how long the pause will be, we are planning for an extensive pause and will ask DPP to share more after we ask them to come up on this measure. That said, I will be working closely with DPP and the administration to determine next steps and plan to prioritize proposed amendments to public, civic, and institutional uses, residential uses, agricultural uses, and miscellaneous uses at future P&E committee meetings. As I mentioned at the last, just a note again, use types are color-coded in the master use table. Commercial uses are red. Each use type has use categories: daycare, eating and drinking, lodging, retail, and each use category has regulated uses: adult daycare, child daycare, hotel, timeshare, bar, nightclub, etc. As I mentioned at the last meeting, in an attempt to get input, my team has proactively reached out to industry trade associations that represent large numbers of hotels, restaurants, bars, and our retail businesses, as well as organizations that have raised concerns on these provisions in previous drafts. Members, I'm just going to take a brief pause, please. Members, we are reconvening. Members, please note that we have posted to the agenda the CD2 OCS 2023 0345/24/2023, 10:45 a.m. that was approved by the committee on April 6, 2023 and postponed. Members, as I mentioned and as detailed in the agenda at today's hearing, I will be prioritizing amendments relating to commercial uses. Listed on the agenda is Council Communication 146/2023. My proposed additional commercial use amendments would make significant changes primarily to hotel and commercial recreational land uses, as well as minor clarifying and non-substantive amendments to timeshare, retail, personal services, car wash, parking, and short-term rental uses. The major amendments I have proposed for today are to the hotel and commercial recreational land uses. I will start with hotel amendments. As a reminder, when the council enacted Ordinance 13-10, the purpose was to permit limited service hotels in the BMX3 zoning districts in the Central Oahu, Ewa, and primary urban center development and sustainable plan areas. The council found that there was a growing demand for lower intensity hotel facilities that do not offer the same amenities. The idea was that limited service hotels would have less special events facilities, would be smaller, and would cater to the non-destination, non-tourist, and family business-oriented travelers. In line with that, I am recommending the replacement of minor and major hotel uses with a single hotel use. I think the idea behind splitting up the hotel use in two uses was to capture the limited service hotel concept. However, I think we can accomplish this through hotel use standards. I also think that smaller or more limited hotels are really only an issue in BMX3 zoning districts. Next, I am also recommending that we maintain existing standards relating to weddings and special events and a minimum number of days that guest rooms have to be offered for transient accommodations, provided that these standards would only apply in the BMX zoning districts. And finally, consistent with the findings of the council in its enactment of Ordinance 1310 to expand the hotel use in BMX3 zoning districts, I recommend that we restrict the size of hotels and all associated hotels accessory uses to 2.0 FAR in the BMX3 zoning districts. And members, if you could look at the document that I provided on your desk to give you an example of, to put into context what a 2.0 FAR is, I've put on your desk the Hyatt in Kapolei, which is a 1.14 FAR, just to give you some context of what we're talking about. Moving on to commercial recreational uses. For general outdoor recreation and general indoor recreation uses, I am suggesting modifications of the definitions to make clear that these uses are meant to cover amusement-type activities that are overseen by an operator at facilities and that occur at facilities that are not open to the public, and to distinguish these uses from other similar uses like public facilities, which includes public parks and libraries, private parks, golf courses, and private clubs. Relatedly, I am also recommending reinsertion of the nature-based recreation use, which would be a facility or area dedicated to outdoor recreation that promotes or enhances access to natural areas. For example, this use includes areas not open to the public for fishing and hunting, hiking and bicycling trails, horseback riding tours, and campgrounds. Reinsertion of this use may address some of the concerns raised about horse stables, and I will ask the EPP this when we get to discussion. This use is very similar to a use in the existing land use ordinance called outdoor recreation facilities. Although previous versions of Bill 10 would have allowed nature-based recreation in the Ag 1 zoning districts, I am not recommending expanding this use to Ag 1, which is consistent with the current LUO. I would also like to make a verbal amendment to the nature-based recreation standards to modify line item number 9 on Council Communication 146/2023 To clarify that the intent is that overall density for cabins must not exceed 1 cabin per acre, and no kitchens or wet bars are allowed. This means that only 1 cabin is permitted per acre, but all permitted cabins may be concentrated in one area. Also, to add a plus symbol in footnote 1 to the master use table for Ag 2 to make clear that for land within the state land use agricultural district, a special use permit approved by the Planning Commission may be required. Additionally, my other proposed amendments would clarify that timeshare uses will not be expanded beyond where they are currently permitted in the LUO, make minor amendments to clarify that financial institutions, not only banks, are covered under the general retail use in response to testimony before the committee in April. Add other schools to clarify that schools other than K through 12, vocational schools, and universities fall under the general personal services use, also in response to testimony before the committee. Add noise and other buffer standards to general personal services and car wash uses, consistent with general eating and drinking and general retail uses. Remove some unnecessary standards for parking related to marked stalls and ground surface requirements. Make non-substantive amendments relating to short-term rentals by adding a written description that explain the maps that were added to the land use ordinance under Ordinance 22-7, and make non-substantive amendments to various definitions for clarity and to distinguish uses from other uses. Members, I would like to take testimony before we introduce the administration. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, we have testifiers.
We have Jolie Tokusato. When I call your name, please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record.
Okay. I'm Jolie Tokusato with Unite Here Local 5. City Council needs the tools to manage tourism, our largest industry. Developers and corporations want to make money. They go before a city department and neighborhood board and make all kinds of promises about community benefits. Local 5, we say our piece and about quality jobs and long-term benefits and impact on resources. Up it goes and then nothing. No accountability. What happens afterwards? Hotels are real estate and profits to them. Want bigger profits? They cut jobs, eliminate services, pay less, give less benefits, raise prices. Sometimes they convert to condos or condotels, and then they have the nerve to say, hard to get all those owners to pay more. They're gonna take back their keys and use their own housekeeper, even if they have housekeeping facilities. I bring that up because that is happening, even at Union Properties. But we have the option to fight back. We go on strike for 51 days, I'll be real quick, so we can still be major contributors to the community. Other people, other workers, they're not so lucky, so then it becomes a big race to the bottom. And so we want you folks to have full discretion of what happens to our community. We see that you've been listening and we appreciate, but there's so much more that we can do, and I can't say it all because I have a minute, right? And so we do stand by our written testimony. That was just my opinions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions for the testifier? Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Jason Golden. I'm a resident of Honolulu since 2019. Came here to develop a small business called Beach Day Hawaii, a case study in the problem that you're solving right now with Bill 10. I did submit a written testimony, and I am offering myself my time, my knowledge and experience in collaboration and study and how this bill could be implemented in a way that's transparent for the communities it impacts and for the potential economic benefits it could bring to the communities that are in Hawaii that are struggling to make ends meet. I'm the founder, an end-user founder of a company called Daydream Technologies that is using the experience we learned in developing our brand here in 2019 and studying the problem over the last 4 years. And we're interested in partnering with communities and government to create a solution that's beneficial to all. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? If not, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have a remote testifier.
When I call your name or last 3 digits of your phone number, please follow the prompts. If there's anyone standing by remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. So the first testifier is Angela Young.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Chair and Vice Chair and the City Council, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support of Bill 10, the LUO ordinance, and just really grateful for all the work from the City Council. And we should be appreciative of their work because I think the City Council does their best in managing everything. And also, we have to remember the final draft of the LUO is 400. The final version of the draft is 436 pages. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Clerks, do we have anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you so much. Members, we are in discussion. We have for the administration today, Don Takeuchi Opuna, Director, Department of Planning and Permitting. Members, if it's okay, before I entertain all questions by members, I would like to first focus our discussion and questions of DPP by subject and then open it up to any other questions. So first, with regard to hotels and size restrictions in the BMX 3, how many hotels has the city already approved in BMX zoning 3 districts?
Thank you, Chair. I'll have Liz Krieger answer some of these specifics.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and members. Elizabeth Krieger with the Land Use Permits Division of DPP. The question about how many hotels have been permitted in BMX 3 districts, the answer is there are 4 that were permitted through conditional use permits that were in EVA, and then 4 that were permitted through interim plan development transit permits, or IPDTs, in Ala Moana.
Thank you. What is the height and FAR of those hotels?
So the conditional use permit approved hotels in EVA range from about 60 to 90 feet. And the ones that were in with the TOD, the transit-oriented development plans, they ranged but were approximately 400 feet in the Ala Moana area.
And the FAR of those hotels?
The floor area ratio of the hotels in EVA ranged from about 0.6 to 1.14. And then the ones in the Ala Moana usually were about an FAR of 10. And again, that's why they were through the interim transit plan development permit of the transit-oriented development.
With the example you provided to the committee, thank you so much for this Hyatt in Kapolei at 1.14 FAR. How many more stories could be built to max out to the 2.0 FAR?
I'm not entirely sure what the floor plate of that hotel, what the square footage of the floor plate would be, but I'm going to guess that they could add maybe another 3 stories.
Thank you. Members, do you have any thoughts on the 2.0 FAR maximum and whether it is too much or too little? The thought was to be limiting but not too limiting. Any manao? Councilmember Say? Otherwise, I'm gonna move on to my line of questions.
Well, Liz, for the development of the Kapolei area, what was the thoughts or what was the recommendation of the second city in Kapolei that the state was gonna incorporate hotels? The villages of Kapolei, was that, what, in their overall master plan, did they incorporate the development and the construction of hotels?
The master plan for Kapolei is not something that I'm particularly familiar with, and the Kapolei urban design plan is also something that I'm not particularly familiar with. They did have the Ko'olina hotel areas, and then those areas that are controlled by the state, like there are a couple of hotels, I think, over there, and then there might also have been some in the military lands, but for those areas within the business mixed-use district that are under our regulatory authority, it wasn't until 2013 that hotels were allowed.
Allowed, okay.
Councilmember Say, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to my line of questions.
Okay, go right ahead.
The next has to do with council approval. We went over this in April, but I just want to recap for the members why I am not suggesting council approval of hotel developments. In addition to the resort district, the resort mixed-use precinct, and the BMX4 zoning districts are also high-intensity zoning districts, and the resort district and precinct were specifically established to provide areas for visitor-oriented destination centers. It is my understanding that conditional use permits do not currently require council approval. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right.
Mahalo for that. I also wanted to note for the members that a future phase of amendments to LUO articles will include updates to the LUO's permit provisions. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right.
Members, I would like to focus discussions on which permits should be approved by the council when the LUO permit provisions come before the council, so that we can look at permits holistically and consistently. With regard to impacts of hotels, I did want to note, members, that I think ensuring the definition of hotel include housekeeping facilities, limiting the size of hotels in the BMX3 districts, and maintaining and updating applicable use standards for hotels in the BMX3, including requiring hotel units to be used for hotel use versus residential use, all of which my recommendations would do, and addresses some of the concerns raised about further regulating hotel development. Members, do you have any questions to DPP about hotel uses? Vice Chair Cordero.
Chair, I actually have a clarification on what you just stated from your statement relating to permitting. So saying that since we're dealing with the land use currently but not permitting, that permitting will be taken up as a holistic permitting process. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I'd like for DPP perhaps to outline again, because we are in the second phase of considering use, but another phase would have included permitting. So could you clarify that, please, DPP?
Yes, we are currently working on phase 3. So this is phase 2, this Bill 10 is phase 2 of the LUO update process. We're working on phase 3 right now, which addresses Article 2 of the land use ordinance, and Article 2 is where it lists out all of the different types of permits, how long each one takes, whether they require a public hearing, who the ultimate decision authority lies with, and all of that. So yeah, we are currently working on all that, what's a major permit, what's a minor permit, all of those questions are will be in the phase 3 update.
Yes, please continue.
May I just request when a timeline would be for phase 3 of discussions relating to permits?
That's a really good question. We do need to transmit to the council through the Planning Commission. And one of the questions about the delay with Bill 10 is kind of the question of letting that phase 3 sort of catch up. There had, in the beginning of Bill 10, there were a lot of questions and some confusion about the interplay of these permits. And I think that we're working to be ready quickly to be able to show how we're trying to streamline the permit process so that it's more understandable and all of that. But yeah, we're working on it actively, and I don't have an exact timeline, but that is the intention, is to be able to present that to you, relatively quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Do any members have any questions? Councilmember Say.
So Liz, would you consider having as a use all that you would allow hotels to become utilities?
To consider hotels to become, like, to categorize them as utilities?
Also, as far as generating their own power, generating their own sewer system, and the idea is that it becomes a footprint of sustainability. And I bring this up because if we're all talking about land uses, I think it should be incorporated, because some of the hotels or condominiums today are converting to those dual type of use of gray water and then recycling it at their property. Would that be in conflict as a use?
As a use for purposes of the land use ordinance, that would not be in conflict. Those provisions and all of the ways that the city and the state are encouraging low impact development and encouraging, integration of solar and all of those water saving methods, all of those can be done through other provisions. They don't need to also live in the land use ordinance.
Okay.
So so we rely on our sister agencies to ensure that the way that infrastructure supports these facilities is meeting the city's standards.
So the reason why I posed this question, Madam Chair, was the thought about we have to be futuristic, or what you would like to see your future hotels to be like. And that's why I bring it up as far as, would a property owner have that opportunity of saying to the council or the planning commission, yes, I would like to have a micro type of industry within my particular property. But at this point in time, I don't know if we're going to get any more hotels as far as for Oahu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I'm now going to move on to nature-based recreation. As you know, we have received numerous emails with concerns about horse stables. In addition to looking at relevant provisions when we get to agricultural uses, do you think that reinsertion of the nature-based recreation use will help address some of those concerns?
Yes, I think it will help.
Members, do you have any questions about nature-based recreation uses?
No questions, Chair. Just appreciate the conversation, and we're still fleshing out this with the community, and I appreciate you highlighting it.
Thank you
on our side.
Okay.
I know, yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to move on to commercial uses on agricultural lands. Since Bill 10 was introduced, there has been a lot of discussion about use of agriculturally zoned lands for non-agricultural uses. In previous hearings, changes were made, and I supported reducing the types of non-agricultural uses that would be allowed in agricultural lands, particularly Ag 1 zoning districts. I did want to note that if my recommendations are adopted, the only commercial uses that would be allowed in Ag 1 districts would be hospitals, and the only commercial uses that would be allowed in Ag 2 districts would be nature-based recreation, adult daycare, child daycare, major animal care, and zoos. In all of these situations, if these city agricultural zoning districts are also in the state land use agricultural districts, the uses would also have to be permissible under state law or would have to obtain a special use permit. In a quick review of HRS Chapter 205, I would note that some of these commercial uses include activities that may be permissible under state law, including raising of animals, game and fish propagation, public and private open areas of recreational uses, such as riding stables and picnic grounds. Additionally, I did want to note that these uses are already allowed in these districts. So for DPP, can you confirm that hospitals are currently allowed in the Ag 1 and Ag 2 zoning districts?
Yes, they are with a plan review use permit, which is approved by resolution of the City Council.
Can you also confirm that zoos, outdoor recreational facilities, daycare, and commercial kennels and hospitals are already allowed in the Ag 2 zoning districts?
Yes, they are.
In an effort to be even more protective of agricultural lands, the CD2 and my recommendations require that for adult daycare, child daycare, and nature-based recreation uses, 50% of the zoning lot area suitable for crop production and livestock keeping must be dedicated to crop production and livestock keeping. Does the current LUO have any crop production or livestock keeping requirements for similar uses?
The current LUO requires 50% dedication of active agricultural uses for agribusiness activities, outdoor recreation, and group living facilities.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions about commercial activities in agricultural districts?
I have a couple, Madam Chair. My first question is that these commercial activities, if they're permitted in agriculture, I think the landlord should, or the landowner should go before the Land Use Commission first because of the 4 classifications that we have state. That was always my thought, Liz, that I'm the landowner, I've got my land designated by the state as agriculture, da-da-da-da-da. Are they trying to do it end around? No? As far as these activities now that are commercial on agricultural lands?
No, they're not trying to do a workaround. Everyone in the state land use agricultural district must comply first with state law before they can come to the county. So we do have some agricultural lands that are on state land use urban areas
Right.
and that the county zoning is agricultural. But you're right, if anything requires a special use permit, it either has to be approved by the Planning Commission or the Land Use Commission before it can come to us for any subsequent approvals.
Okay, because the discussion that we had earlier in regards to Kunia, condominium, right, I don't know how you pronounce it, that's agricultural lands, and now the state has allowed it to be subdivided on the premise that it is permitted. But my point, is it gonna then put the responsibility back on the city to provide the services that, there is no infrastructure? Please, if you could respond to that concern I have.
Sure. So the subdivision or the
Yeah.
condominium property regime where you might split ownership of a piece of agricultural property would not be directly related to the proposed use. So each, you could have several agricultural activities on that property despite a fractured ownership.
Okay,
But in terms of infrastructure, the infrastructure responsibilities are addressed during the subdivision application, and the applicant has to show how they can meet the infrastructure requirements for that subdivision. Condominium property regimes are a little bit different. We do not recognize them for purposes of the zoning code, so they need to provide whatever infrastructure needs that they're going to have for those specific uses.
the city, not the city. Another case, I want to bring up, Madam Chair, just one more on this.
No,
issue.
no, absolutely. So, of course, we're going to just, I wanted to follow up on commercial uses in agricultural lands. Then I'm going to open it to all of the members with regard to any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, I apologize, because the other one I thought was a big issue would be Mokuleia. How that big company bought all that land and now they want to try to, condominiumize it? And it's a concern, but I'm sorry, I just trying to think it through, but please, you can proceed.
Okay, well, first, I guess my question is, do members have any questions in general about where we are in the process? Because I'm going to be making my recommendation soon. Any other questions? What I'd like to do, I earlier stated about the pause for the director if the director can come up. Director Puna, if you could explain to the committee what the plan is and the thought was with regard to the committee taking a pause on the consideration of Bill 10.
Thank you, Chair. We really do appreciate this long pause in order for us to reevaluate and make sure that the LUO, as it's updated, is streamlined and doesn't create excessive burden or regulation. It's in line with everything else that we're doing at DPP to make sure that we're lean and accurately address some of the issues and are able to enforce based on how the law is written. So we will take that time, and all that's been talked about and discussed through these hearings as part of a relook at what Bill 10 is doing. And then part of that is we are, understaffed. LUPD has maybe, I think, a 60% vacancy rate. And I also would like to be more involved in understanding how this will play out and what the LUO, we want to make sure that it's done right so that we can work with it and the community can and our inspectors can. So that's the plan. Thank you.
And Director, what time frame are we looking at?
So I think that through the end of the year, we're really going to work hard on reevaluating. So hopefully by early next year, we will be ready to come back.
Okay, early next year. Okay, thank you. And just for the members, I just want to remind everyone what other uses are left. Again, it will be public, civic, and institutional uses, residential uses, agricultural uses, and miscellaneous uses. There has been a stakeholder group on agricultural uses, and I know that they have already put together recommendations, and I know I will be meeting with them in the near future. I will be recommending that they all set up meetings with you individually. So for me, despite the fact that there will be a pause, a lot of stakeholders put a lot of sweat equity into talking about recommendations regarding Bill 10, and that doesn't mean that we can't be having discussions individually with these stakeholders. So I just wanted to let you know about that. At this point, the chair recommends that the version, did you have any comments, Councilmember Wire?
Yeah, just comments and no questions, but just wanted to say, mahalo, Director Puna, Liz, everybody on your team, and you, Vice Chair, and your staff, because I know this has been, this is a big undertaking and there's a lot of work, and so just really appreciate the insight and, just the thoroughness and everything. I just wanted to double check regarding the stakeholders. So that's specific to ag. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the Hawaii Farm Bureau, Ulupono Initiative, and other stakeholders, and DPP. I know not DPP, but Office of Economic Revitalization's.
Their working group.
Yeah, they were there. Oh, and DPP sometimes in the stakeholder groups, just so that the community could rally around what is in the latest draft,
okay,
and come up with recommendations. And so I feel that when we do come to that sections, we are going to be well prepared. And I would recommend that if you so desire, because I know on the North Shore there's a lot of agricultural activity, you can actually hold your own stakeholder meeting, separate from this HUI that has been formed to look at it holistically with everybody.
No, I appreciate that. I know we sent a list of names to OER that we were hoping they'd consider including on their stakeholder group. So I'll follow up with them, but really appreciate the due diligence and the openness and willingness. But I agree. It sounds like the groups you're meeting with are spot on. And so that I really appreciate that.
And I really appreciate it because while DPP, I know they have a lot on their plate and they're not just looking at this phase, but also the other, they just talked about phase 3 that they're going through. I don't want the community to think that this effort is going to be sidelined. In fact, they have the latest version of the bill that they have every right to be looking at and make recommendations so that when we do reconvene, we're well poised to be able to move forward with a lot of recommendations. Yeah, we don't have to wait until 6 months from now. in other
No,
words.
yeah, mahalo for that. And I'm sure OER is not just, watching us intently right now, but I'll throw it out to DPP too. But I don't know if it should be extended to maybe the neighborhood boards to proffer a person to participate in the stakeholder group. I mean, for us in particular, we have 7, but I think the most relevant would be Kahaluu, North Shore, and Ko'olauloa. Throwing this out to the administration, because I think they're the ones that are also including folks, right? But just as ideas for folks to be in the official stakeholder group to the extent that there is one. Yeah.
Sure, I would recommend you follow up because I know in my district, Waimanalo is actively involved. They have a Waimanalo Agricultural Association. And so, but what I do is every time I go to any of my neighborhood board meetings, I give them an update. I think I've been giving them an update on Bill 10 since the beginning.
No, I know they appreciate it, and I really appreciate this conversation too, because I think ag is such a diverse topic that affects so many different types of organizations and of all different sizes, and so I'm really appreciative that we're having a really broad approach in terms of ensuring that the ultimate product isn't going to have unintended consequences, and really uphold the intent of the entire bill, right? So appreciate your work.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cordero?
Thank you, Chair. And I was just wondering, and it doesn't have to happen now, but if I could just put out just the request, because I was looking at the 1.1 for FAR and then your recommendation for but the recommendation for 2.0 FAR. And I was just wondering if there's maybe any information or data to show I guess the differences and how they came up to the recommendation of 2.0 versus maybe 1.5, yeah, if possible.
Absolutely, and I actually think that we may be considering a site visit, and I'll let you know. We haven't told you, but we would welcome you joining us in a site visit so that we could visually see exactly what we're talking about.
Can I go?
Do you have any comments with regard to her question on 2.0 FAR?
Yeah, I can just provide a little bit of insight. So this came out of a discussion with Councilmember Kia Aina's staff about how we would put some kind of cap on the size of hotels if we were to do so, because it can be very complicated, especially when you have other permitted principal uses. So you're not going to limit the size of, say, the retail or the restaurant that might be on the same site and that kind of thing. Within the industrial mixed-use district around the airport, the provision to allow hotels within half a mile of the airport has had a 2.0 floor area ratio limit since the land use ordinance was implemented, I believe, in 1986. So we thought that that created a certain amount of symmetry, and it also exceeds the level so that it wouldn't be limiting based on those limited service hotels that have already come through. But that's a little different than those that are in Ala Moana, because they're under that totally different provision of the transit-oriented development, and those interim plan development transit permits all come through the city council. So, so this, just in terms of thinking about that limitation, would be on those that were permitted as a conditional use that would require a conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The chair recommends that the version of Bill 10, 2022, CD2 that was approved by the Committee on Planning and the Economy at its meeting on April 6, 2023, OCS 2023-0345/4/24/2023, 10:45 a.m., be further amended by incorporating all of my proposed amendments in Council Communication 146, 2023, with an additional amendment as we discussed to modify line item number 9 on Council Communication 146, 2023, relating to nature-based recreation standards, to clarify that the overall density for cabins must not exceed 1 cabin per acre, makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments, and makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. Any discussion, objections, reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD2. Chair then recommends that action on Bill 10, 2022 CD2 be postponed to the Planning and the Economy Committee meeting on a date to be determined. Any further discussion?
Just to follow up, so I think it was mentioned that next year was when we would be resuming. Was that the?
I think that, I think they need time to, and at next future meetings, I probably could elaborate more. And I wanted to give them the flexibility. I think she's looking at the latest time frame, but if they are ready prior to the ending of the year, then I just don't want to foreclose that.
No, I'm fine. Just wanted to clarify, so for the community expectations and whatnot. And then I'm assuming that we would just do an additional extension if we needed at some point, and then the bill would get reintroduced, or how would that work?
We already had extended it through the beginning of February
Yeah,
at the last committee.
correct. So then if we start up next year, and it's approaching that 2-year, introduction point.
Yes, so it would either be another extension, and of course, there is a time maximum on Bill 10 as well.
Okay.
And so that is all being factored in, whether or not there will be a need to reintroduce a bill strategically at the end of the year,
Okay.
so that we'd have the latest version, as opposed to me always having to refer to the last passed version in a bill. And so that's on the table, but for now.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay, but for now, because I want to give, we have a good working relationship with DPP. I want to give them that flexibility to see what exactly is needed. My proposal to reintroduce the latest version, incorporating everything that was amended unto today, is an option. But again, I want to make sure that they have the time necessary to determine what the best course of action is moving forward on the overall dialogue.
I appreciate that, Chair. And I think that's perfect. Yeah, I think because I wanted to make sure, I think you clarified too, saying if we needed to reintroduce a bill, we could.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't be like we come back in January and we're up against like,
No.
we got to bust something out really
So
quick.
two things that we need to be conscious of would be, number one, the fact that there's a time frame on Bill 10 expiration time frame, and then we would have to get an extension.
Okay, appreciate that, Mahalo.
No problem. And then for members, if you're not aware, the City Council has a website, honolulucitycouncil.org/Bill10. We've endeavored to, given its complexity, if you go to the legislative history, it's very complex. So the chair's office worked to create a website so that you could direct stakeholders to, so you know exactly where we are in the process. Give us some time with regard to the amendments today, so we have the latest update, and then eventually it would say as a version of May 25th, 2023. So just give us some time for Office of Council Services to incorporate all of this, all of the amendments today. And again, in just closing for this section, I will make sure that I will make public a clean version of the CD2 that was approved today. So members, we are going to move on to agenda item number 2, informational briefing, update from the Department of Planning and Permitting on their building permit process backlog. We have for the administration today, Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting.
We didn't say the so ordered part.
Members, I was asked because it wasn't clear, so just for purposes, again, the chair recommends that action on Bill 10, 2022, CD2 be postponed to the Planning and the Economy Committee meeting on a date to be determined, Any further discussion, objections, reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Again, moving to agenda item number 2, the update from the Department of Planning and Permitting on the building permit process backlog.
Thank you, Chair. So we appreciate this opportunity to provide an update on the permitting backlog. For the most part, things have been pretty steady, as you can see on this slide. Except in the pre-screen, we've actually kind of gained some time in that phase. Otherwise, code review and approved to issue have been basically the same. So the overall duration is about a median of 209 days. So with regard to the pre-screen, the reason why we believe that there's been an increase is that the bot has been working really well, and the backlog has moved to the manual pre-screen. So we looked close. We're working on the manual pre-screen to see what else we can do to address what's stuck there. And when we sat down with different reviewers, and we realized that there's inconsistency among the different reviewers. And we don't have a written standard operating procedure, so we're working on that, because we can train people verbally, but if we don't have a document that's consistent and we can teach, I think that in itself will help to cut down training time and the ability to do the correct manual pre-screen. So part of the exercise that we've done in the last couple months is going through the pre-screen process, the manual pre-screen process. For instance, looking at the plot plan, what are they checking for? And apparently we were looking at every single part of the plot plan, when maybe for certain types of projects, we didn't have to. Say for solar, we don't need to make sure that there's a driveway. So we're really slimming down what we're looking at, and we're saying each permit is different, and that shrinks down the time that we're doing manual pre-screen. We also looked at part of the manual pre-screen is putting information back into the software, and there's a lot of manual processes or manual steps within our software that we have to do, which it seems very excessive and sometimes redundant. So we need to update our software, which is in the works. We're working on the procurement of that, but we're working with the 20-year-old software, and we know that we had an RFI. We looked at 17 different vendors, and we know that there are systems out there that are going to auto-populate information and make our processes a lot quicker and intuitive. So that's going to be a huge gain for us when we get the software up and running, which we think will be 1 to 2 years, but we're definitely working on that. And I just wanted to give you an idea about the ratio of volume of permit applications to the capacity we have to review. So for instance, in pre-screen, we get 14,000 applications that need to be pre-screened, and we have about 8 reviewers right now. So if you break that down by the number per year and then the number, per week, each reviewer should do about 30 pre-screen applications. But when we were looking at the pre-screen, it takes, it's hard to even meet the 15 per day quota. So that's why it's really, we do not have the capacity for the pre-screen. And then if you look at the commercial, there's building, mechanical, and electrical. And as you can see, we only have 3 reviewers to do 2,600 applications per year. And under commercial, these are a lot more complex projects. It can be, you know, an hour to several hours for just one project. That's not including the time when plans come back and comments aren't addressed, or we need continue to have these cycles. And then residential, about 9,000 applications per year. We only have 7 reviewers, and so it breaks down to about 24 reviews need to be completed per week. So the ratio between how much we need to get through and the number of people we have is not well balanced. For building, mechanical, and electrical, a couple months ago, we did get 5 new engineers for each of those 3, and we are trying every day to hire. It is difficult. There's not a lot of applicants. We're competing with much higher salaries. The federal, you know, they can pay even higher than private. So it's very difficult, but we're doing everything we can to hire and make sure that we have the sufficient capacity to do these reviews. So again, we're just continuing to do everything in every direction to improve the backlog, hiring, re-engineering processes, establishing written standard operating procedures, getting new software, taking away burdensome regulations, and we're looking at getting a vendor to do review similar to what we do internally. I spoke last time about taking out some of the state review and other agency review that is calculated within our timelines. We continue to collaborate with stakeholders. We continue to try to put information on our website to educate applicants and design professionals. And we always want to try to provide information, data to the public. One thing that people can do on the outside is to make sure that their plans are good quality and that they seriously address the comments that are provided, because the better your plans are, the faster they will go through. That's just simple. So that's basically a current update on our backlog, and I'm available for any questions.
I just want to make sure, well, thank you so much for continuing to do this every committee so that we could see over time the progress that's being made. I just want to make sure, do you have the necessary funds? You don't have a funding problem with regard to your hiring, do you?
No, I don't think we have a funding problem. I think we do have, and this is probably across the board for the city, I think there's a problem with the salaries, the level of salaries.
Can I ask with regard to loan forgiveness? Because for a lot of the engineers, right, I'm pretty sure that they have loans. Is that something we can contemplate with regard to the city, creating a loan forgiveness program whereby when they come out of the school, they may not be getting the same salary as elsewhere, but we would help them with loan forgiveness and to get some training, and then of course they may leave after a while. But I just think that that's one way of creatively getting people in to deal with this backlog that we're having.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, public service, myself as an attorney, I was able to take advantage of a program like that. So I think that's a good incentive.
Can we look at any, you know me, I'm looking at the ARPA why don't you consider it as part of a proposal so that we could get it operative as soon as possible?
Sure, yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can look into that.
I don't think anyone was going to disagree that with regard to capacity, DPP is where everyone is focused. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I had a loan forgiveness program for myself as well. And so it is commonplace for the state, county, or federal governments to have loan forgiveness programs as part of their incentive for people to get into public service. Councilmember Wire, did you have any comments?
Yeah, or a couple questions for Director Mahalo, Vice Chair. I just wanted to hone in on the conversation about SHPD, as I'm understanding more and more about that process. So are there times when DPP is moving forward because, you know, they're interpreting SHPD's lack of response as no comment, or are we typically always waiting for SHPD, and what is that looking like?
I think it's more of the applicant is waiting for SHPD to make their
Applicant.
comment, so it's just stuck within our timeframes before we can move forward, or we can check it off as, you know, approved or by SHPD.
I see.
But we are working with SHPD. We've definitely opened up communications recently, and with the Preservation Commission, that we all need to work hand in hand. So we've even begun sharing data to make sure that our maps are properly red flagged. So it's an ongoing discussion that we're having with them.
Okay, so just so I understand, you're saying that the in terms of the delays in process, it's SHPD's response to applicants that is the cause of delay. It's nothing in between DPP and SHPD.
Right. I think
Okay.
it's part, yeah. If it has to go to any other agency for review, it's there, but it's being counted within our timelines.
Okay. And I, you know, there's so many components of this. I know you're working on it probably nonstop. So I'm just curious in terms of, you're talking about the commission that just got stood up or activated, and then talking with SHPD. Is there kind of a like SOP or plan that's going to emerge from this, or it's more ongoing right now?
So just discussions now, but I do believe that there will be administrative rules for the commission and how that will work and integrate into our process. I think there could be internal SOPs for DPP and SHPD as well, as far as like when we can kind of streamline the interaction between us.
Okay, appreciate that. Because same offer was made to the commission, like they're the experts, so you know if they need us to assist in adjusting the law and the rules, you know we're here to do that. So I'm sure you'd be talking to planning chair or the rest of us about it. So just bringing that up again for DPP as well.
Thank you,
Mahalo.
Councilmember.
I wanted to welcome Councilmember Okimoto. And I understand Councilmember Cordero has a question.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hi, Director. Relating to any possible policy, because I know that not only, I know we provide the policy, but in collaboration with the department, has the department and any of the divisions sought to work with the council besides Bill 56 and any other policies or proposed bills to assist with the whole process?
I think we're always looking forward to, you know, presenting ideas to the council to make sure we can streamline. I think soon we'll be presenting or, you know, hoping to have a bill presented that will take out this affidavit that's been required, and it has really seemed to create a lot of problems for applicants and our staff. So stuff like that, we're always looking, and we're happy to work with you to get the legislation through that will be helpful to us.
That's great. And can you explain the affidavit just for the general public?
So this was a requirement that was established just a couple of years ago, and I think it was in response to a really bad landowner who wouldn't comply. So applicants always have to provide an affidavit. It was a notarized at first to show that you don't have any notices of violations or orders on your property before you can apply for a building permit application. So it created a whole other, level of paperwork, and it did slow down because people would come in and like, what do I need to give? What do I need to provide? Oh, this isn't correct. So I think we have better ways of dealing with that type of situation, and that such that not everyone has to kind of suffer for it. And even the new software should be able to better flag situations and not allow applications if you do have existing fines or violations.
Okay, thank you, and we look forward to that collaboration and possible policy changes. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add one more thing? So we hear some people, we hear good things, that they feel that things are speeding up in different areas. And then we do hear people saying, why isn't it faster? And we would like to, it's not like there's a switch that we can, say go faster. We really are trying to address core fundamental changes, and we don't want to just use Band-Aids or other methods that aren't really going to fix the problem. So it's going to take time with the people, the processes, and the technology. So we appreciate patience, but every day we're really working hard to fix the situation and come up with even more creative ideas to address things. So we appreciate patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Opuna. And my question, forgive me, I missed the beginning of your presentation, so if you did explain this, I again apologize, but if I just wanted to understand, you have the timeline of permitting process improvements, the median, and it's really good to see the improvements that have been made. I was just wondering the difference between that April 6th date in our committee versus today, where it went from 9 weeks to 14 weeks. Could you just explain to me why that is?
Right. So we think part of it is so we had the bot, and it's been working really well. So it's fast, and that the backlog shifted from the bot to the manual pre-screen. So we have a lot in that area. So we are trying to focus on how we can streamline and cut down some of the steps in that area. But we think it's temporary. We just kind of have to keep catching up. And then throughout each phase, we anticipate once we clear that, it's going to be the code review. So we're trying to gear up and see how we can add more capacity there with what we're working with. So there's always going to be these kind of, fits and spurts of like working through it. So that's why we ask for patience. But we're always trying to, go faster.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to continuing. If this is really good information to see, I understand that when one thing is faster, you have another backlog somewhere else. But thank you for providing this to us. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. We will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have one. We have Angela Young.
Angela,
Yes, Chair.
please proceed.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young, testifying in support. And so at this state, when CARES was advocating, there was discussion about large-scale developments and how developers are taking on a lot of risks. And it takes a lot of time. So the House Housing Chair stated the goal of addressing this concern is to expedite the process of a 10-year wait time by reducing it to 2 to 3 years. And they mentioned the county's pre-development process and procedures should be streamlined. And there was a floating bill for years about the State Land Use Commission and district boundary amendments, and counties have the ability to do district boundary amendments for 15 acres or less. So the concern is, if it is a county property or a state property, why does it have to go through the State Land Use Commission, and why doesn't the city have a little bit more control over its destiny? So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Angela. Members, we are in discussion. Hearing no discussion, we're going to move to agenda item number 3, update from the Department of Planning and Permitting on Development and Sustainable Communities Plan Schedule and Trans-Oriented Development Plans and Zoning Status. For your information, the presentation is available in your binders as well as online as Departmental Communications 331. For the administration, Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director of Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. I'm available for any questions about this report.
Members, do you have any questions? If not, thank you so much for your report. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
We will now proceed with remote.
Did we get the report or is it a communication online? Okay, mahalo. Oh, it's in the packet. Mahalo, Madam Clerk.
Okay, do you want me to pause?
If can, yeah, can we pause for?
Okay, we'll just pause for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank- The committee has now reconvened, and I understand we have questions from Councilmember Cordero. Vice Chair Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. Thank you very much for this update. And I also want to thank the DPP team and the City Administration for the Halava TOD zoning, the first public meeting that we have, as it mentions here that we are in comment period for summer 2023. First off, do we know a timeline for the comment period? I know there's a deadline for online submission, but is that the actual deadline as well, just period?
I think it is, but I will clarifying it back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. And I know that a lot of people are coming out to the Halava, especially from my Halava, well, obviously it's Halava area, to talk about certain things that has already been discussed and adopted as a plan. I just want to know, how much will that change? What will the comment period and comments provide in any possible amendments to the actual TOD plan?
So I believe our department, we will take in those comments and evaluate them and see, how it might affect the plan. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you please explain that again?
So yeah, I think it's just a general, regular, we take in comments and we review them and try to integrate them into the plan.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And I do recognize that a lot of them were kind of outside of DPP's scope relating to property values as well as infrastructure as well. So I do recognize that. With that, I would like to go to the airport TOD. I know I've brought this up every single time, but I know that it says, thank you very much for the note regarding the heights. Did we finally get response?
I would have to check with staff. But I'm not sure. I can get that information to you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Because as we've seen, we've talked about the airport TOD plan for forever. We've adopted it, and now we're in the we're in the, I guess, the next stages, and without that information, I think it's just good to have, especially for the, not just airport TOD, but as it affects Kalihi TOD and downtown TOD. And maybe I just feel a little like not rushed or hurried, but because I felt like I couldn't get those responses when I was working on the TOD plans back in the day.
Sure, yeah, we can definitely get you that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's all my questions that I have for now, but I'm excited to see the 3D graphic model for the Kalihi TOD. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions? You sure? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
We will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion. And if there is no discussion, we are going to move forward with agenda item number 4, update on the allocation and use of American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds. For the administration, we have Andrew Malahoff, Executive Assistant, Office of the Managing Director.
Morning, Chair Kiana, members of the committee. Andrew Malahoff from Office of Managing Director, here to provide our monthly update on the allocation of the FRF funds. So as of May 15th, these are current commitments in tranche 1 out of the 193 we received in June 2021. Just a little bit over 190 million has been committed, which represents 98% of tranche 1. Tranche 2, as you can see, we have 132 million or 68% committed, again, as of May 15th. In total, this brings us to 83% of all FRF monies committed, or roughly 321 million. As we have on our One Oahu website, this is just the breakdown by category. And a status update on Appendix A, and this is as of May 22nd. Of the total 45 projects that were in the original Appendix A, 19 of those projects, or 42%, have been approved or reprogrammed and are in progress. We have an additional 15 Appendix A projects that are in active development, and I know that some of the departments have been actively meeting with the sponsoring council members. And for some of those projects, they have been discussing potential reprogramming alternatives. We had previously identified 7 projects that were not viable, and that was via Mayor's Message 59. Since then, an additional project, number 25, has been identified as non-viable, and our department is in conversations with the sponsoring council member on possible alternatives. And for the sake of brevity, that's the update on the allocations.
Thank you, Mr. Malahoff. And the number 25, I guess, is my project, and so I'm working on reprogramming that. So it's not just non-viable, but in the stage of reprogramming, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Members, any questions? Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha. Aloha, Andrew, thanks for being here. I was just going to ask, I think it might be useful info to have when folks ask, do we know what percentage has gone to housing and homelessness specifically? Or first I'll ask, does housing homelessness fall into community support or another area on the pie charts?
So for the purposes of categorization, we do have under community support a subcategory, which you can find on the website, that is tailored to affordable housing. And so the vast majority, because these are the recovery plan categories, which again, we created as a city construct to try and help better reflect how we're using these monies, because sometimes funds may be used under a treasury category that doesn't accurately reflect what it's being used for. For example, it may fall under revenue replacement for treasury purposes, but it's actually an affordable housing project.
Yeah.
So we do have further breakdowns, and if it's helpful, I can send that over to the committee. And
Yeah, that would be perfect for us. I think it'd be useful info, just when we're like, folks in the community are asking about everything that's going on. So I think that would be good
Absolutely.
info to have. Yeah. Mahalo.
Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a quick question about the non-viable projects. I understand you said 7 here and then the 1 additional. Could you just explain what you look at before you declare it non-viable, and how many of these are going to be, like Chair Kiaina said, and going to be reviewed and hopefully come back? Or is it done once it's declared non-viable?
so generally, when we received the Appendix A at the start of this fiscal year, we did assign it to the departments that we thought were best suited to execute the projects that are contemplated in Appendix A. And we asked the departments to conduct a rigorous review and make sure, determine if it's something that they are capable of doing, if it's eligible under Treasury rules, and in particularly whether or not it can meet the timeliness. So those have been basically the overarching tenets for evaluation. And in instances where a department determines that based on Treasury rules and timeliness and just inherent ability, that a project may not be executable, that would be the point where we would ask that they first go back and talk to the sponsoring council member, see if there are some ways that the original project can be tweaked or revised. And if that's not possible, then that would be the point where you determine that particular project is non-viable, and ideally the sponsoring department works with the council member to develop an alternative project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Malahoff, could you perhaps give us, I know that there's been concerns expressed from Washington, D.C. with regard to what's going on in the debt ceiling and the potential of a clawback of the ARPA funds. Could you update us on what you are aware of on what's going on?
So I think we all are aware there have been discussions about a potential rescission of ARPA funds. Unfortunately, it seems that there's no clear understanding of how that would apply to SLFRF funds. I know that the managing director has been in contact with our colleagues in Congress. And similarly, there's uncertainty as to what extent, if any, a rescission as part of the debt ceiling negotiations would be applicable to FRF. That being said, we continue to look at potential contingencies if there is a worst case scenario where a rescission calls for all unobligated monies to be returned. And that would involve perhaps applying our unobligated funds to existing appropriate programs for the city.
And can you elaborate a little more on the latter of what you just said? So members, basically, if things fall apart in Washington, D.C., then funds that are not obligated would be subject to rescission. And so I understand the administration is taking precautions to have a strategy in case that were to happen, correct?
Correct. And so again, without knowing what Congress would define as unobligated, we have a myriad of potential options. But I'd say that we would again look at perhaps advance funding for things like hazard pay or OPEB. Those items that would have a tangible benefit in the long run to the city taxpayers. But again, until we know what obligated actually is defined by Congress, it's difficult to know the extent of our potential exposure.
Okay. Councilmember Wire, did you have a question? No, I just want to make sure that we should all be vigilant and be prepared And as soon as the administration, we need to know their strategy with regard to the potential funds for rescission. And that assuming we would be supporting them to take immediate action to ensure that the funds do not go back. So Councilmember Wire.
Yeah, no, actually, I appreciate you bringing that to all of our attention, Chair. Yeah, so I was just curious, how does the securing of funding work in the sense that, is it when a project is ready for contract, request goes over to the feds to get the specific funds, or do we have all this money sitting in an account already? And it's just waiting to be contracted out, if you know what I mean. Like, so for example, for the, like, say, CDBG, you have your allocation, it's in your award. And then when you're ready to use that particular money, you go through FGU, that goes to the feds, they send the money into an account, And I'm just curious because with chairs, I didn't even know this was going on. So I'm curious, like, how does that funding process work? Like, and like you said, we don't know. I mean, I'm assuming if it's contracted, they're not going to take that. If it's at some other stage in the process.
So,
yeah.
As far as how the funding works, it would depend on the types of projects. So for example, if we look at the approved projects in very broad strokes, we have projects that support personnel, we have projects that support capital acquisitions or equipment acquisitions. There are projects that are for long-range capital infrastructure projects. So depending on which FRF project we're talking about, I think that would dictate how that funding is set up. I think and I would wish I could defer to BFS on the nuances of our accounting mechanisms. So in certain cases, you may have a significant amount that is encumbered because it's part of an ongoing RFP. But for personnel, I think that's, they draw down on that as they need it.
Okay.
Does that help?
No, that's helpful. I mean, helpful in the sense that, like, if the RFP goes out, but prior to the actual award being made, I'm worried that it could still maybe be pulled back, right? Because even after, like, the initial selection, I'm assuming it's not until there's actual contract signed that it's binding on us. But okay, I mean, I'm just wondering, maybe this is more reason to pump out whatever we have left into stuff we can do now. Like, well, let's go just buy a bunch of property for transitional housing.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's one of the challenges that, as we're trying to plan for this, is that we don't know what the legal determination of unobligated funds is actually going to mean.
Yeah.
And again, if it will be applicable to FRF. So we do our best, again, to try and plan for all contingencies and hope for the best.
Okay. No, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo, Chair.
Councilmember Say.
Mr. Malahoff, in your slide on the website up there, commitment by categories, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The first pie chart reflects what has been approved.
Correct.
That's what you said. So at the end of the expended, will public infrastructure get that amount that is in the original approved category? I'm questioning it because we made a request yesterday to DENV. If some of these monies will be used in matching with the state. So I'm just questioning that the original approval should be the same pie chart for the expended, because the total is 321 million.
Correct. At the end of the day, presuming all the projects are completed, that ratio should be the same.
Okay, and then for the community support, was that tied to the rent utility relief fund? A great portion of it right now. That was already expended.
That was expended? Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then for the city operations, were there all personnel?
I believe the vast majority of it is personnel.
Okay, so that's where I think Chair has to make up the difference if we're going to provide to continue the warm bodies that we had done in the past 2 years. So I just bring this up because next time around, by the end of next year, we'll see that whatever we had approved, we had expended tied to the pie chart that is originally at the beginning, and what is encumbered is just encumbered, but expended is a key for us, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mello.
Members, any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. We will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you so much. Members, we are in discussion. And if there is no further discussion, there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.